Hey, this is part 2 to my Horus video. If you haven't seen part 1, it'll be linked in the description and the comment section below. In the first part, we covered the first 10 chapters of the game. In this part, we're going to be covering the last 12, and there's a lot in there, so without further ado, let's get right into it.
Chapter 11, Moving Back Home. Once the group gets back to the mansion, everyone goes to sleep. Then you get to play through yet another Superman 64 dream sequence. This time there are spike pillars, but as far as I can tell, they don't really affect anything since you can't get hit by them and they just sort of nudge you to the side. Why is this a thing? In the morning, the group recruits the blind man to help them set up a computer system with internet access that allows the group to contact other survivors around the world, including Dr. Hero in Japan. They tell Dr. Hero about the plan to make the Nice virus and explain that it'll take a couple of months. After this, the group ends the video with Dr. Hero. Silton wheels a piano into the room, and this gives us some backstory explaining how the piano belongs to Heather, and she tried to play a song that she wrote for her parents the day that Horus arrived. But they got distracted by the delivery, and apparently that's why she hated him for the entirety of the tutorial. You then play the piano with Heather in a rhythm game. The next mission given to you by the game is a pretty big undertaking, and practically an entire game on its own. Think of it like the Great Maze from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, except instead of exploring areas you've already been through, you're exploring entirely new areas, and it's like 100 times better. Those entirely new areas are the entirety of a giant mansion. The game gives you a crowbar to break into doors you weren't allowed to go through before, and a map of the mansion that you'll have to fill out as you go. These are both extremely useful tools and prove invaluable in your expedition through the mansion. Now, I would love to explain in detail each of the rooms in this giant mansion, because they're all very interesting and unique in their own way. However, there are 82 of them, and that's not counting the 10 hidden rooms which you have to find on your own, and the other 3 explorable locations, which are a decent bit larger than a single room. This area of the game is absolutely huge, and if I just listed off every location here, it would take hours, and would definitely be very boring, so I'm going to forego that and save everyone watching it and my own sanity from explaining the nearly 100 rooms in this area. Anyway, the game tells you that there are 4 robots, gives you the location of 2 of them, and tells you to go kill them. After defeating each boss, you will get a new upgrade which expands your arsenal and lets you access new areas. These robots make up the entirety of chapters 12 through 15, and because they can be taken down in pretty much any order, I'm just going to explain them one at a time. The first boss is the air boss, which is the one marked on your map directly above where you start. He's located in the library and has 2 phases. The second phase is pretty simple, but the first phase is kind of complicated, so here it goes. First, he starts blowing air towards you, which launches books in your direction, and you have to dodge them. After that, he will launch a series of missiles at you, which you also have to dodge, and then he will start sucking air in, which also sucks in books, and you have to dodge them as well. And while he's sucking in, you have to throw one of the missile heads at him that he drops on the ground after he shoots the missiles, and clog the port. After this, he will go into the sky and start launching more missiles, at which time you must clog the other open port, which crashes him into the ground, rinse and repeat. Like I said, phase 2 is pretty simple. You're just standing on top of him, and you have to run around him, dodging his arms and legs, and then bop him on the head. Eventually, he'll fall into the flames, and you win your prize, which is the shoulder bash ability. This lets you bash with your shoulder, which can break these breakable wall things. You can also upgrade this ability in the store, which lets you hit enemies with it. It's very useful, and I suggest doing so as soon as you can. The second boss is the Earth boss, and yeah, this one's Breakout. No, seriously, it's just the game Breakout. He throws things at you. The boulder will break the bridge if you don't knock it back, the flower vine ball thing creates spiky vines, and the pine cone creates bombs that explode if you don't hit it back in time. But it's nothing crazy. Just hit all the things back at him and you'll win the boss fight. After beating this boss fight, you'll get Gel. This will allow you to walk underwater for a short amount of time with some strangely familiar music for some reason. The third boss is the Fire Boss, and he's located in the master bedroom. He throws bombs down at you and you have to grab them and throw them back at him. There are 3 phases to this fight, but they're all pretty similar, just slightly changing how you have to throw the bombs and where he is. Word of advice, this fight is a bit easier if you've beaten the air boss already, as you can bash through these pillars that he creates, but it's not impossible without the ability. After beating this fight, you gain the air balloon, which lets you float up into the air. You can also control it a little bit. Additionally, in the shop, you can upgrade this ability and control it even more. The power-up is a bit less conventional, so the game does help you out a bit more by framing pictures of hot air balloons in some of the locations you can use it. The fourth robot is the only one that requires beating a different robot to challenge it. Before challenging the water boss, you have to beat the earth boss and get the gel. This because the water boss fight includes, surprise, a lot of of swimming. Basically, you swim through a maze and have to beat the water boss to the end of it. Next, you get onto a high-speed platform. This just makes me think of the roller coaster levels in Mario games. And then the third area has you going through another water maze. Psst. You can just skip this third area by going past this buzzsaw as long as you have a shield. This last battle gives you an immensely useful ability to crawl while crouching. You can also upgrade this ability which lets you run while crouching. Seriously, this is probably the one I used most out of any of these abilities. After defeating each boss, you're given a device and a 10-minute timer. During this time limit, you must make it back to the main entrance of the mansion before the device explodes. The group then uses the device to build satellites. After building the first satellite, a young version of the professor appears. He opens a gateway that allows you to travel in between the main entrance and the professor's room. This gives you a shortcut to the upper part of the house, and also gives you access to another room. It's a boss rush room, complete with all your favorite boss fights, and 6 more that are hidden. Then, just as soon as he arrives, the professor is gone again. After that, Dr. Hero calls the house and explains that he found other survivors, before he's rudely interrupted by killbots breaking into his bunker. It's also revealed that the old lady invited the shopkeeper and the junkyard owner to come to the house for a bit of convenience, so you don't have to run into town every time. And with that, you're sent off to find the second robot. After finding the second part, the group connects it to the satellite, Preston gets beat up by some criminals while he's out, and Heather can still not get into contact with Dr. Hero. Then it's on to boss number 3. After installing the third part, Deck loses his cool and screams about betraying everyone or something. I don't know, it's hard to hear over Dr. Hero, who just regained contact with the group, telling everyone that they were forced deeper into the bunker and lost some good men, but managed to fend off the robots for now. He reassures everyone that he'll hold out for as long as he can, and with that inspiration to hold you over, you're on to the final robot fight. At this point, I've flubbed up returning the fourth part, and... they're fine. Anyway, after installing the fourth part, did anyone say Superman 64? No? Too bad, we're doing this anyways. Seriously, I don't know why these sections are in the game. They don't advance the story at all, and I checked. Getting all the rings doesn't even do anything as far as I can tell. There's literally no point for these to be here aside from filler, and it's a bit disappointing since the dream sequences could have had an interesting story impact on the game. Oh well. Next up is the intermission. Basically everyone goes to Alice's church, and you play some minigames. And then Alice finally lets you clean out all of her junk. During this, Horace finds a scrapbook, and it turns out Alice and Sim had a son who died at a young age. This doesn't have much of a story impact, but I guess it's to explain Alice's hoarding. When the group gets back, Dr. Hero calls again, this time with other survivors he was able to find. And let me just say, these guys have some super high tier, very real names, such as Bobamastertea, Hans Olo, and Donkey Kong. After that, the group finishes the nice virus and plays cards while it uploads. Damn, these guys are super chill considering they're trying to prevent the end of the world. Superman 64. The next day, Dr. Hero calls again, and it turns out that the Americans got overwhelmed, so rest in peace, Donkey Kong. No, we're not doing that again. We only have original jokes on this channel. Then Sim comes in with even more bad news. Apparently the computer system has somehow become sentient, so Horace has to go up to the furthest room away from the entrance and shut it off. After you make it to the top spire of the mansion, you find a giant head in a jar, and he tells you his life story. How the old man created him just like Horace, but eventually the old man died, and he was forgotten about. He learned that he could control the nanobots throughout the house, and apparently that was the cause of that this whole time. He then inputs a code to send a missile towards you. At this point, the game lets you input a code, and the code that you're supposed to enter is very clearly the Konami code. However, I wasn't able to enter it in time, and I couldn't find any footage of anyone else entering it either, except for one person who entered it after the timer had already expired, and it didn't seem to do anything, but the timer was up, so it's hard to tell if the code would do anything if you entered it on time. Either way, it doesn't really matter since you survived the blast. After Heather uploads Horace's consciousness into the brain, you basically go through Wonderland again with a few slight changes, like coconut brains in jars. After making it through all the Alice in Wonderland style rooms, you have to play a few games of Memory Match, a game of Higher or Lower, and then spell the words Game Over, which somehow defeats him. This is a weird boss fight. After the fight, Horace wakes up and we move on to Chapter 16, my quest nearly complete. I wish, this video is already long enough as is. After getting back to ground level, Heather and Sim are able to use the data that Horace collected to set up the computer and broadcast the nice virus. Suddenly, robots all around the world decide that killing people is for nerds, and so they stop doing it. After a few days, Dr. Hero and the other scientists come in person to celebrate the success of the nice virus, when suddenly, the man in black calls the mansion, and lets everyone know that he's on the moon and is still a part of this story. Oh, also he wants to invite them all there. I see absolutely no way this could go wrong, and apparently they don't see it either, because they all agree instantly. After a minor hiccup where everyone nearly dies, we're on the moon. After making it inside the base, the man in black shows everyone around before the Frenchman asks why they were invited. The man in black sidesteps the question and shows everyone their rooms for Chapter 17, Walking on the Moon. Superman 64, in space. After waking up, the man in black leads everyone into a huge auditorium with an obstacle course in it, as well as a few other people of note. He challenges Horace to run through the obstacle course, and once you get through a few different courses, the man in black turns towards the audience and claims that Horace can do almost anything. He then orders Horace to kill the man in gray, and Horace refuses. The man in black uses this as an example of why robots should not have free will. After the presentation, the man in black, Horace, and Deck are walking down a hall. The man in black sends Deck off and then starts his evil villain monologue before revealing that he's captured everyone, and plans on executing them and destroying Horace in order to achieve his plans. The man in gray shoots the Frenchman, then the German scientist, and then is about to shoot Logan before he breaks free. A firefight breaks out with Logan covering the group. Still, Dr. Hero is killed, Sim gets shot in the abdomen, Preston is killed, and Heather gets hit in the back. Luckily, with Logan providing cover, the rest of the group is able to escape unharmed and get off the moon. The man in black has Horace destroyed and thrown in the dump. Luckily, his Lazarus chip does its thing and brings him back, albeit a bit worse for wear. At this point, you have to escape the facility, and you can only crawl. Full disclosure, you can save some rabbits during this segment, but I have no idea what they do. They just enter the escape pod and you never see them again. On the way, Horace manages to grab Heather's camera. Then, after one more quick genre change with the escape pod, Horace crash lands back on Earth for Chapter 18. Planet of the Robots. Horace wakes up at the crash site fully repaired, before the old man guides him through several rooms from throughout the game, that slowly get more and more glitchy until... Horace is found and repaired by another robot. The robot introduces himself as Fort, and says that they have to hurry to avoid the helicopters that patrol at night. After this, you have to traverse through an even more destroyed landscape than previously seen. And it was at this point that my recording got corrupted.
Unfortunately, I lost all the footage for Chapter 18, and a bit of footage for Chapter 19. Because of that, I'm going to be using this playthrough of Horace to fill in any gaps that are missing.
Unfortunately, Horace was torn apart by the man in black, who took his gloves and boots. This means that you cannot use your gravity abilities or the balloon. When you find shelter from the helicopter, Ford explains that his core is too powerful, and when the Nice Virus was broadcast, his kind was sentenced to death, but he escaped before that could happen. Horace also realizes that Ford is carrying birds with him, and Ford explains that he's taking care of them and that he's named them Barry and Alice, but isn't quite sure why. After this...
Why are we still here?
After this is one of the last boss fights of the game against a helicopter. The boss is pretty simple in the beginning, simply run for cover and dodge the fire from the helicopter. Once you get to the end, Fort needs to help out. Simply run to grab the oil canisters and bring them back to Fort. After you grab each canister, the helicopter will bomb out a part of the building until there's very little cover. Once Fort has all 3 canisters, he uses his weapons to destroy the helicopter. When the pair makes it back to Fort's house, there's yet another music segment before Horace asks about his gloves and boots. Fort has heard of them but keeps calling them the sacred artifacts and says that only the chosen one can obtain them. He explains that to get them, Horace has to enter the tournament and win. After talking for a bit longer, the two end up going to bed, and it's now time for Superman 64, now with extra Fort. The next day, Horace seems adamant on entering the tournament in order to get back his boots and gloves, and defeating the man in black. Fort seems pretty skeptical about the plan, but Horace is confident, apparently based on the dream he had last night, which, are you and I looking at the same dream? Cause I don't see how this is him beating the man in black. Fort helps Horace practice for the tournament a bit by playing another variation of the game Pong, and then the two leave, since apparently it's a several month-long walk to the tournament. And they walk right out of the house, straight into Chapter 19, the tournament. After traveling for months through the most well-known landmarks around the world, Fort and Horace finally reach the tournament. The tournament itself is pretty simple. It's pretty much just 3 rounds of arcade games that you've been playing throughout the game. The other robots that you compete against are filled with flattering and not so flattering depictions.
Everyone cheered. The host even declared me the winner. But then,
For some reason, a videotape which contained a better score than mine was presented. I was then informed that I would have to play my opponent again.
After the round 3 surprise, you're forced to play through a 4th round in a brand new game. Once you beat all the other robots in the tournament, you get brought to a dungeon, I guess. Here you meet a mysterious robot. He tells you to get the artifacts, you have to beat him in a game of his choosing, and the game is... damn it. Okay, I love Pong as much as the next guy, but this game might have a problem. This is at least the 3rd time beating a game of Pong is required to progress in the story. None of these games are particularly difficult, but still, this seems a bit excessive. Also, for some reason this is not considered a boss fight, and you can't replay it later using the professor's room, which I think is a bit odd. Anyway, after you beat Pong 9000 over here, he tries to convince you to kill him. When Horace turns down the request, you get crowned as Defender of the Faith and Ruler of the Known World. Well, that escalated fast. One minute you're playing Pong for like the 900th time, and then the next, you're Ruler of the Known World. This is one of the reasons I love this game's story. It's so far from the original plot. Remember when you were trying to get back to Earth to warn everyone about the Man in Black? Yeah, I don't think the game remembers. They're just like, this is the game now. Well, maybe I spoke too quickly, because after this, Horace alerts the robot about the Man in Black, and the robot talks with his advisors and assures Horace that the situation will be handled. Horace gets his boots and gloves back now that he's ruler of the universe, but they seem to have less magical gravity properties. Horace then spends multiple weeks playing arcade games and basketball before Fort points out that Horace may be getting delusions of grandeur. Horace denies the claims, but Fort eventually convinces him to go to the park along with Barry and Alice. This leads directly into Chapter 20, Going Home Again. These segments are mostly pretty pointless, but at least the music is nice. The next day, Horace and Fort head out to the park. Horace tries to take a picture, but the camera is full. He looks back through the pictures that Heather took and gets snapped out of his delusion pretty quickly. Horace decides he wants to go home, and with a little help from Fort, the two make a break for it. The game then has you play through a segment which honestly has no right to be as cool as it is. Horace and Fort are traveling across massive landscapes, and the game transitions as you play through them, featuring a forest, a sawmill, Wonderland World, and many more locations, before the two eventually depart on a boat and dock it just offshore of Sitcombe, next to Alice's house. After the two finally finish their multiple month-long venture, Fort notices switches on Horace's shoes. And now you have your gravity powers again. Once you dock in Sitcombe, the game gives you an opportunity to prepare for the last section of the game. So if you need to sell any junk or collect anything from the store, now's the time to do it. Horace and Fort eventually make it back to Mr. Silton's place. Horace walks in and explains everything that happened to him. Just as Horace is about to continue, he feels a tug on his leg. It's the Siltons' daughter. Mrs. Silton says her name is Heather, but don't worry, Mrs. Silton is pregnant again to save on sprites. Mr. Silton loses it, saying that Preston would still be alive if it weren't for Horace. The old lady tries to calm him down, but that just sends him into a further rage, leading him to reveal that Heather also didn't make it. Horace looks as if he's about to shut down again before the old lady puts an arm on him, and... well, I can't say he didn't deserve that. Silton storms out with Logan chasing after him. After the commotion, everyone settles in for the night, and you know what that means. This time you're accompanied by Heather and Preston. It's a little odd, but it was closer to what I was hoping for these segments, so I'll take it. Finally, we come to Chapter 21, The Final Battle. In the morning, the group plans their strategy. Sam explains that they lost control of the satellite, and if they can't regain control of it, it'll be the end of the world. Mrs. Silton then shows Horace pictures of the mansion. It's surrounded by hundreds of guards and several killbots. The group agrees to go scout out the mansion. When they're there, the man in black shouts generic villain line number 53.
I should have made sure you were dead when I hacked the chart.
Before explaining that he modified the Nice virus and presses a button. Suddenly Betty and Fluffers don't feel so good, before Fort starts suffering from the same symptoms. He takes one look at Silton's daughter before setting down his birds and charging at the troops. Now I'm not going to show you the whole fight scene here, but it's pretty great, and I would say it's worth the cost of admission alone. Fort goes out with a bang, taking some killbots out along the way. Oh, and Dr. Harold too. I guess he was still part of this story. Well, he's gone now. The remainder of the group opens fire to give Horace cover so he can sneak into the mansion. Now, I'm not a parent, but maybe you should move your child out of the way so they're not in direct line of fire. Just a suggestion. Anyway, Horace makes his way up to the top of the mansion and finds the giant brain, but Deck holds him at gunpoint before he can do anything about it. And the man in black reveals some cliche backstory where it turns out he was the third brother with the professor and the old man. It's not really that important. What's more important is that the professor comes out of nowhere and smashes the machine with a giant wrench. After this, the man in black shoots him several times before the professor stumbles back into the closet that he came from. So so I guess that was his final stop. The Man in Black leaves to repair the machine and tells Deck to shoot Horace if he does anything, but Deck grows a conscience and can't bring himself to do it. He tells the yellow bastard to go after the Man in Black. Wait, did I forget? Oh. It's a whole thing. It's a nickname Deck has for Horace. It's really endearing moment in context. You're just gonna have to trust me on this one. Horace catches up with the Man in Black for one final boss fight. The first part of this boss fight is pretty similar to the original boss fight with the Killbot, where it smashes its hands down and you have to dodge it. The second phase is basically Rock'em Sock'em robots. If the health bar depletes on either of the robots, they stumble backwards a few steps. The goal is to knock him into the fire pit. Once you do that, Horace will finish him off with a Shoryuken. Now, this part is important. The game lets you walk up to the Man in Black and watch him slowly fall to his death. What I didn't know at this point is that there's a way to save him, and you can get an achievement for either outcome. You can't come back to this point later, so I would suggest copying your save before doing this, or you might end up playing the whole game over again just to get this one achievement. To be fair, it's not very intuitive. To save him, you have to move Horace's hand over his, and then mash the cross button. So thank you Guild Gnomes in the Steam Workshop, because this was not clear. It's hard to tell that you can even do anything. The first time I went through this segment, I thought it was a cutscene. That's basically the theme of this game. Mostly amazing and innovative gameplay, interlaced with incredibly compelling story. But every once in a while, there's a gameplay element or a story piece that is uncharacteristically poorly designed. But more on that later. Either way, save him or don't, the rest of the game plays out pretty much the same. After defeating the Man in Black, Horace looks over the balcony to see the Man in Gray sneaking up on Mrs. Silton. Luckily, Preston's dog attacks him for just long enough for Mr. Silton to get there and save the day. I won't say exactly how this fight goes, but it ends with Mr. Silton bashing his brains out with a pipe. After the battle, the group is able to regain control of the satellite and save the day. Horace is heralded as a hero and invited to give a speech at the UN, but...
And I was invited to give a speech.
When Horace wakes up, Sim and the old lady explain that the altered nice virus took its toll on him. It didn't affect him as much as it did Fort, Betty, or Fluffers, because Horace has a higher level of consciousness, but it still wreaked havoc in his system, and Sim explains that he doesn't know how much longer Horace has left. Maybe months, maybe years. Horace then reveals that he can feel pain, which shouldn't be possible. It's not totally clear if this is a result of his higher consciousness or the altered nice virus, but it doesn't really matter at this point. Horace doesn't have much longer. Sim tells Horace he should do anything he has left to do, bucket list style, and the others assure Horace that they'll always be there for him, which leads us into chapter 22. That'll do. This chapter doesn't have any story, and you can end it anytime by going to this computer over here. It's basically just do anything else you want to do before the end of the game. Mainly, get the collectibles that you missed. So I'm going to use it to rant. Remember when I said this about 500 years ago? Now this is where I'm going to mention another criticism. You cannot replay these levels. Any pre-made missions are unplayable after you go through them once. I'll expand on this later and explain why it's such a problem. Just for now, remember that you can't replay any of these missions once you beat them. Oh yeah, we're talking about it now. There are essentially 5 different collectibles in this game. One is junk that you can collect throughout the game, of which you're supposed to get 1 million. There's about 1.25 million pieces of junk in the game, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get this one, and it's not really a problem. My problem is with the other ones. In addition to collecting junk, the other collectibles are the letters of Horace's name, the Game Guy cartridges, Bad RAM, and photo booths, which is a collectible that only appears once you've beaten the game and gotten to chapter 22. Let's go through them one at a time. The photo booths are pretty simple. Hats are now all over the map, and you can use them to replace your standard bowler hat. If you take a picture in a photo booth that matches the hat, you get a giant pile of junk. You don't get anything for doing all of them, you just get these individual piles of junk. Pretty simple. The Game Guy cartridges are actually a pretty interesting concept. You can buy the Game Guy in the shop at a certain point. You can play any cartridges you have, plus this knockoff Tetris cartridge. The other cartridges can be found in various spots around the game, and allow you to play the various arcade games. The letters of Horace's name are also a pretty cool idea. Basically, you have to collect the letters of Horace's name, H-O-R-A-C-N-E, and if you collect one of these, it'll give you a different title screen when you open the game. These title screens are references to various well-known games. The final collectible is Bad RAM, and this one is fun because I can't tell you what it does, or even how many pieces there are. and not for lack of trying. Like I mentioned earlier, there are locations in this game that you cannot revisit once you beat them. And keeping on brand with making occasionally horrible decisions, the creators decided to add bad RAM to these levels. Meaning if you didn't already know this and comb through every level thoroughly the first time through, you could easily lock yourself out of this collectible. What makes it worse is that the graphic wants to be sly and not even tell you how many there are. So TLDR, there's basically no way for me to tell you what they do, if anything. Now for the more wide-scale problems with all the collectibles, besides trash. First, even with the game locking off huge sections, the map is still absolutely massive, meaning if you're trying to find the last letter of Horus, it's almost impossible. The game also doesn't have any form of fast travel, so you're going to be walking around this huge area on foot. Additionally, the game doesn't explain to you what the collectibles do. This problem mainly affects the letters and bad RAM. The letters are just there. The game doesn't tell you that they give you title screens, it doesn't tell you where any of them are, it doesn't tell you how many of them are, it doesn't even tell you that they're the letters of Horus's name. This would be such an easy fix. Just put a screen in the first time you collect one of these explaining what they are. Or at least don't put a fucking question mark on the HUD. Alright. Now that I'm done ranting about collectibles, I just want to mention something about the Professor's Room. As mentioned, the room allows you to refight bosses, but there seems to be some glitches associated with this room. The most egregious I found is this one where the game just forgot I was doing a boss rush and put me at the actual location of the boss fight after I won. The fight I was doing at the time ended up being a main map location, but I have no idea what would have happened if the boss fight was in an off-limits location. Maybe there is a way to get back to those places? Oh well, on to the ending with the game. Once you choose to retire, the game ends with an epilogue. Horus, over the months, gets slower and weaker. He relaxes and spends his days as he wants. One day, Mrs. Silton goes into labor and she has her baby. The baby won't stop crying, and Alice jokes about him wanting a teddy bear, which jogs Horus's memory. The game then puts you in the backyard and finally lets you claim the teddy bear that the old man had placed there for you all those years ago. Horus brings the teddy bear back and hands it off to the old lady, who gives it to the baby, and after that she turns back to Horus with an expression that we're all too familiar with already. The game puts you in another dream sequence, but for once I'm not going to complain about it. It actually fits nicely here. Horus is reunited with Heather and the old man in heaven, but not Preston, which carries some pretty unsettling implications with it. Anyway, the game counts up your junk tally before the three pass through the pearly gates as the credits roll. There's one final message for players at the end, but I think I'll leave that for you to find. Afterward, the perspective shifts to the Siltons' new son, where it's revealed that they named him Horus. At its core, Horus is a game about loss, and how people handle grief. Some people shut themselves off from the world, some hold grudges, and some get violent. Some learn to forgive and move on. The game has many takeaways, but I think this is the main one. The characters in this game deal with so much loss. Loss not only of people, but home, the world they knew, and so much more. It might have been obvious from my commentary, but I would heavily recommend this game. There is so much more that I wasn't able to cover in this video. Like Giant Bernard! I didn't even mention him. Well, I did just now, but you get the point. The game has amazing game mechanics, a super entertaining story, and so much heart. It honestly disappoints me that this game is as unpopular as it is. It's honestly impossible to find guides on anything related to the game, and there's barely any playthroughs even. It may have a few problems here and there, and I tried my best to address those and be as fair as possible with my critique, but in the end, I would say that playing through Horus was a worthwhile endeavor, and I would recommend it.